when we are not protected energetically, we go around all day, every day, picking up energetic clutter. So imagine living in a house where every time you go shopping, you don't put your shopping away. Eventually, it's not going to feel nice going into that house. When I work with somebody that does a lot of this work, there's a vibrancy there. There's a vitality in their system that you can feel. When somebody is not working with their energy body, it's like a stagnancy. They're heavy. So if you picture a Coke bottle being shook and there's nowhere for that gas to go, that's what anxiety feels like. So with cranial, we're taking the lid off the Coke bottle and slowly allowing the bubbles to release to allow the nervous system to regulate.
Can you talk to me a little bit about how working in this energy field is different when you're working with children versus adults?
I mean, I don't even know, like children, sparkles, shimmers, rainbows, adults, wow, heavy, and that's even with adults that have done a lot of work on themselves, because we are carrying so much more trauma. I wish everybody would understand that energy is science. Everybody sees it as this woo-woo, but we now know the energy field scientifically exists. So even if we remove the tapping into higher dimensions and angels and guides, remove all of that and purely work with the energy, the importance of energetic health is everything for me.
Welcome to the Enlighten DXB Podcast. I'm your host, Erika, and I'm super excited today. I have a special guest from the Dubai healing community, Janelle Houston, with us, who is an energy worker, a craniosacral therapist, and she's done all sorts of energy work, actually. So I'm really excited to have her here with us. Janelle, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Erika. Excited to be here.
I was thinking of having you on this podcast. I love energy work. I really resonate with it. But actually craniosacral therapy, and I haven't done that with you or anyone else. There's a lot of topics I think we can discuss today that will also open my eyes.
Sure.
But I wanted to start out with the basics. How do you define energy work? And what would it mean to you to have a clear energy body?
Ooh. So when people come to work with me, I have realized I'm a very visual learner, and I think a lot of kids are. So I'll always get a blank piece of paper and I like to draw a little stick man with a bubble around it, because we in this field assume that everybody knows about us all having an energy field, and it's not common knowledge. It's not something that we learn in school. And it blows me away, because when you're having these conversations, the kids are more aware than the parents. Actually, it's the parents that you're teaching. So I draw a little stick man with an energy bubble, and around the energy bubble, I do a glass, and I explain to them, these kids that are coming to me who their class is sensitive, they have anxiety, maybe they've got issues with anger. In our day, they might have been deemed the naughty ones in school. Thankfully, we've moved away from that a little bit. And then what I'll say to them is, you wake up in the morning, maybe mum's feeling a bit stressed about a presentation at work. So then I draw a line across that energy bubble, which fills the bottom of the glass. Then you go to school, your teacher's feeling a little bit sad. So then we go through a whole story of the fact that they're picking up emotions all day. And then I explain to them, then you come home from school, mum will ask you, do you want a sandwich? You ask for a cheese sandwich. Mum brings you a chicken sandwich, and it's like a volcanic eruption. And even you, when you calm down, you go, I don't understand why I reacted like that. It really wasn't a big deal. So this is what's going on. So then I explain to them that what we're going to do in this session is basically remove all of these emotions and energies that are not yours. So when somebody comes to see me, it's hard to explain. It's a knowing and a feeling. I can see when somebody's energy field is full. So that's what I'm working on, helping them to clear.
Beautiful. Yeah, so there's this tie-up with nervous system regulation, this sense that those that are overwhelmed have like sort of stuck energy, or sometimes explosive energy. What's the difference between, because I feel often when I do energy work, I feel like there's blockages. What is the difference between that energy signature and what you just talked about, which is almost absorbing so much energy from the outside world that it's still overwhelmed, but then there's like an eruption.
I mean, I think there's so many different ways we can hold stuck energy. So obviously we have, so what I always explain to people is we have things that come into the energy field. So everything for me starts with energy. You walk into a room and somebody's angry, without realizing it, you take that anger into your energy field. If we don't clear that out, it then comes into the emotional body. If we then don't clear that, it becomes a physical issue. So we've got that. But then also from a more energetic perspective, if we look at something like Reiki, we're working with the chakras, the energy centers. I bring that into cranial as well. Somebody might have a blocked throat chakra, and particularly with women, we don't speak our truth. And I always joke with people, if we spoke our truth to everybody, we'd have no partner, our children wouldn't speak to us, we'd have no friends. So we have to find a way to clear that. So I'm really combining craniosacral therapy and energy healing at the same time, because the combination of both for me is powerful.
Okay, so there is the mental body, then there's the emotional body, and then there's the energetic body.
Yeah.
And then some might say there's also the spiritual body, which is slightly different. Can you talk to me about how the energy body might affect the mental, the emotional, the spiritual, and how they interrelate?
Sure. So, what I'm educating people as well is the importance of energetic health. So when we were younger, we talked a lot about physical health. Now, thankfully, we talk about mental health, emotional health, but we're still not quite talking enough about energetic health. So I explain to people, when we are exhausted, I had a lady yesterday for a session, she is exhausted. So when I work with somebody that does a lot of this work, there's a vibrancy there. There's a vitality in their system that you can feel. When somebody is not working with their energy body, it's like a stagnancy. They're heavy. So I'll say to these women, it's a lot of mums that I'm working with particularly, even if you have 8 hours of sleep, you do your 10,000 steps, you drink the water, you eat the healthy food. Are you still waking up exhausted? Yes. So for me, it's got two parts. The nervous system. So I don't see anxiety as a mental health disorder. I see it as stored traumas that are stuck in the body and suppressed emotions. So if you picture a Coke bottle being shook and there's nowhere for that gas to go, that's what anxiety feels like. So with cranial, we're taking the lid off the Coke bottle and slowly allowing the bubbles to release, to allow the nervous system to regulate.
And this is through physical touch, right? It came from I did a little bit of research before this chat, early 1900s, more in the osteopath realm. Can you talk a little bit about its origins and how it's evolved? Because it also seems to have evolved more into the spiritual space as well. So I'm intrigued by that.
So when I did my training, it was made very clear to us that it was not a spiritual therapy that we were learning. It was, and I don't want to be disrespectful to doctors, but for me, it felt like being a mini doctor. It was a 2-year diploma. We were learning all about the lymphatic system, all of the organs in the body. So there was no talk of spirituality in the course that we were doing. For me, if you're spiritual, everything's a spiritual experience, right? So me as a being, I am very spiritual. But cranial came from an osteopath, and he didn't quite understand what he was working with. And then when he went to the patient, the bed of a dying patient, and he was holding their system, as that person passed over, he understood what we're working with as something which he then named the breath of life. So think of that as your life force. So when I was talking about drawing that diagram of the stick man, what I do to the right of that is another stick man, and I do a river through it. And then I'll say to them, all of these emotions that are stuck here, these are causing boulders. So I draw little circles on that river. This is causing boulders and sticks in the flow of your health. So then we have children who can't focus, children who can't follow instructions because maybe, for example, they're holding a birth trauma. We know that we can carry traumas through the bloodline. So this is why I love this work. We might be working on something that they've inherited, 3 generations ago from their great-grandmother. They don't even know what it is, but the body just unwinds in the way that it needs to.
As you're speaking, I just can't, I've been hearing in my consciousness, like this connection between breath work, energy work, craniosacral therapy. It all seems to be about nervous system regulation. And breath work I see as a tool. Craniosacral therapy, would you say it's also more of a tool or a method?
I think one thing that I would love to do, Erika, is be able to teach people how to come into that place of cranial without needing a facilitator. I think that's where I'm going to go with it, because I don't want ever to be, you have to come and see me to feel better. Part of my purpose is to empower particularly children that they can do this on their own. So the first seminar, when we study cranial, the main thing that we're learning in that session, we call it SOBA. So it's called State of Balanced Awareness. Now, for me as a spiritual person, what is that? You're basically in that moment becoming one with the universe. If you've ever had that moment, whether it's through breath work, whether it's through energy healing, whether it's through prayer, and you expand yourself, that is the energy that we go into before we put our hands on the person. And that's what I want to teach other people to do. So it's, for me, it's all coming to the same thing, but some people might resonate with breath work. Some people might resonate with cranial. For others, it could be prayer.
Interesting. Should we take 3 breaths together?
Yeah.
Because that's one of the easiest ways for us to center in ourselves.
I'd love to.
Okay. So if everyone joining at home, listening, can just close their eyes and just center and focus awareness into the heart, into your heart. And we'll take 3 deep breaths together with a slight hold, and being very gentle at the top. And so breathing in slowly and holding gently, not tight, not contracted, just relaxed and holding. And then letting out with a deep sigh. And we'll do 2 more of those. Breathing in. And holding at the top, being so gentle with yourself. Bringing all of that lovely energy from our heart, grounding it in our being, and letting out a sigh. And we'll do that a 3rd time. Breathing in. Hold. And out. Yeah. And keeping your eyes closed and just tuning into how that changes how you feel inside, how the energies are moving. See if there's a little more stillness there. Yeah, it's amazing to me what 3 short breaths can do. And I imagine craniosacral therapy is another modality that brings people to that stillness. I want to know, like, whenever I see sort of content about craniosacral therapy, it seems to be about like spinal alignment, and you're slightly moving someone's head. Can you actually, if I came in to see you, Janelle, what would be the process? Like, what are you doing?
Good question, Erika. So the thing is, loosely, there's 2 schools of cranial. You have biomechanical, which is what most osteopaths do. So there is a little bit more manipulation. It is more physical.
Okay.
What I've studied is biodynamic, and that's more energetic. There's no forcing, there's no manipulation. We're working with what we call the inherent treatment plan. So it's different from something like physio. If you went to a physio with a sore left shoulder, they would treat the sore left shoulder. And now we know oftentimes it's coming from somewhere else. So it wouldn't necessarily just be the shoulder. But with what we've been trained to do, we wouldn't even necessarily touch the sore shoulder. Now, I personally, because I've had various pain throughout the years, I don't like to not hold the point of pain. It feels like a half sneeze for me, you know, if somebody leaves a session with me and I've not shown some love and attention to that area. But I had one woman, she's had really horrific migraines for 12 years, done all sorts of medication, therapies, nothing was working. And in the first session, I kept being drawn to her heart. And I said to her, this is emotional. This feels like it's heart-based. Anyway, then when she stood up from the bed and I asked something about one of her grandchildren, and she literally went, oh, and she pulled down into her heart. So we then had the conversation about, you know, being an empath, how much she's given her energy to others, how much she's taken on board. And it made such a difference. Her migraines got less and less and less. So that's a classic case for me of energy going into emotion, emotion going into the physical body.
And when you're going to the heart, do you sense, so obviously there's an intuition there that's bringing you to that space, but do you actually sense the emotions or the stuck energy, or what is it?
Very much. So
what does it appear to you?
It can show up in different ways. So, you know, I had a man yesterday, bless him, and I reflect on this a lot, Erika, because men, when we were younger, were not allowed to cry as boys, and now they're not allowed to be angry. So what are men allowed to do now? You know, they're not allowed to express their emotions. So I had this lovely man come in, actually him and his wife brought their son. And as always, when I'm working with the child and the parents are there, I'm always interested in the parents, having gone through my own journey with my son, you know. He then came on his own yesterday for a session, and he has really so much rage that he has to work really hard to keep inside, and he would never take that out on his family, but it's stuck inside. But I was feeling so much grief yesterday. And obviously having that space on our own yesterday for him to share a bit of his background, I then understood. So I've really encouraged him to come and see me separately, because when he's with his wife and his child, he doesn't feel able to let go of what he needs to. So in the session just with him and I yesterday, he was able to release a lot of that. Sometimes I can have somebody on the table and I can feel grief leaving their system and they don't. Sometimes I had one lady.
And is it grief? Because often grief and anger are paired together.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
for him, even though he was feeling a lot of rage, what's under the rage is grief. And you immediately tap into the grief. And then are you actually just working with the grief, or are you allowing the anger to energetically release as well?
I mean, we keep space for everything. And it's not really, you know, because I believe everybody's their own healer. So what I see my work in these sessions is I am working with their energy to create a step, and it's up to that person to take that step or not. So wherever they want to go in that session and also thereafter is different. So I would say roughly 90 to 95% of people that work with me only feel better after sessions. You have about 5 to 10% of people that will go into a process. Their anxiety might get worse, their headaches might get worse, their anger might get worse. But then I'll get a message the next day and say, wow, that was intense, but I feel so much lighter. So because there's no forcing with it, that person will go to where they're ready to go to release.
What's the full array of sort of how the body expresses as you're working with energy in them, releasing it? And I assume, like, from my personal experience, those exorcisms are from what look like that when your body kind of gets a little contorted and uncomfortable is usually a massive blockage or a pain, and I start feeling pain in different parts of the body.
Yeah, I mean, so when somebody who is not doing regular energy work, and say, for example, they're burned out, they will come and they will sleep in the session. They cannot stay awake. They're absolutely exhausted. And I generally recommend people to come and do 5 sessions with me, because we're training the nervous system to go from feeling safe in fight or flight to feeling safe in rest and digest. And typically it's not just going to take one session. And what we would expect to see over those sessions, maybe the first 1 to 2, they will sleep. Hopefully by session 3, we'll start to see they don't necessarily fall asleep, but they're in a sort of not quite here and not quite there space. And then they get energized. When we have more spiritual people coming on the table that have done work, they can go up to the higher dimensions. They can get guided messages. They can channel their own messages. It's such an array.
Wow. I
had one lady who had a lot of trauma from childhood, and I literally would have to duck because she would nearly punch and kick me. And on one of the sessions, she flipped, thankfully safely, off the bed. But you'll find children will move. So I always explain to kids, if we see a dog, for example, that nearly gets hit by a car, they'll go sit on the side of the road and they shake. So I explain to kids about trauma, but I keep trauma really light. And I'll say, you know, if you're walking to school and your best friend jumps out of the bush and says, boo, that scares you. But instead of dealing with it, we go, and you can literally feel trauma in the body. It's that and it's not been released. So through movement, and that's why you'll see a lot of kids, they'll twitch when they're on the table. I had a lady yesterday, and she's been bringing her son, and her arms wouldn't stop moving, and she said, now I understand why he's feeling that. My arms want to keep moving. So it's, you know, as a facilitator for me, it's always providing a safe space of non-judgment and saying, if you need to move, move. If you need to scream, scream. If you need to shout, go wherever you need to go. Trust your body, trust yourself.
When you started in this, my understanding is that you used to be in corporate and then you became a Pilates instructor. So walk me a little bit through this journey that you've been on and then how you came to energy healing. And then I would love to hear if there is a story of an instance where you were either working with a client or saw someone else working with a client that made it click for you and went, wow, this is the power of energy work. And maybe it was your own case.
So I think, I mean, if we really go back, so I was born in Brunei, and I had an imaginary friend called Mary. Mary is not typically a name that you would find somebody called in Brunei. And now understanding more, I realize I've always been connected to the spirit world. So I had a lot of experiences growing up, which I was terrified of. And I remember even in my 20s, taking a year out and traveling around Australia and visiting my dad because he was based there at that time, and praying to God and saying, I know this is a gift, but I'm terrified. Please just stop it. And my son's been blessed with the same gift.
Wow.
And I think it's that thing of anybody who is here to be of service, we might try and turn away from it, but the universe is always going to like slap you and bring you back. So as a lot of people, oftentimes we need to break to really spiritually awaken. And for me, I think I've had a few spiritual awakenings over the years. My son being born was definitely one of them. I always joke and say I'd created this fake perfect snow globe before he was born. And then when he was born, not only did he shake it, he smashed it. So he just rocked my world upside down.
Why was that?
Because he cried all the time. And now understanding what I do, so, you know, from a human 3D perspective, he's been diagnosed with severe ADHD. This boy is so spiritually gifted and connected. I mean, I remember walking down the street when he was about 4, and we walked past a gardener, and my son didn't even look at him. Mum, he's sad. How do you know? I just know, you know. And he sees spirits, he talks to spirits, he heals me if I need healing. He's just phenomenal. So that him, for sure, he has come to waken me up. And then I never really fitted in the corporate world. So I was you know, one of the popular ones at school, but would always speak to the kids that maybe were less popular, and always thought it was because I was a good person and a kind person. But actually they were my people. I was putting on this mask to fit in with the popular ones when actually I wanted to be with the ones that were maybe a bit more introverted. And I realized that with age, that I was putting on a mask and pretending to be this person that wasn't me. So really starting to get more comfortable with that. But having not fitted into the corporate world, I knew I was searching for something else, fell in love with Pilates, knew I wanted to help other people.
How old were you when you made that transition?
So that was, it was pre-kids, around like late 20s, 30s, yeah.
And how old were you when you had your kids?
So I was 32 and Mimi 34.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, so your son's the older one.
He's the eldest,
yeah. And he was the beginning. People always say, and I always say, you know, entrepreneurship can be a spiritual awakening and a journey. Parenthood is another spiritual awakening and a journey. And there's so many different paths, but parenthood certainly. And even more so if you have such a intuitive, spiritually inclined child that comes into your life.
Yeah, I think I don't understand that the conversations we have are maybe not your typical household. Like, so my daughter, her name's Mimi. I cannot tell you how many times I've called her mummy. And then one day, Abudi and Mimi were talking, and he said, why do I keep calling you mummy? And she said, without even blinking, because I was your mum in a past life. You know, so we have
your
this
daughter
really,
said that?
Yeah.
Wow.
We have this really interesting, and Abudi and I have shared dreams, you know, like I dropped on the floor one day. It's never happened before and never happened since. Spasm in my back. And Mimi was upstairs and I said, Mimi, please come help me. I need your help. She freaked out and she ran away. She went downstairs and a Buddhi, knight in shining armor, that boy will do anything to protect me, came running up. And I didn't even tell him where the pain was. And obviously it can be from the neck to the sacrum. Immediately put his hand on the place that it was sore, and he basically does his own version of psychic healing. And it was gone. Immediately I could stand up and there wasn't even 1% of pain left.
Oh,
and he's done things like that to me countless times.
Wow. Yeah. I can see now why you have a real love of working with children, because you can see the potential of what's possible in your own children every day. Can you talk to me a little bit about how working in this energy field is different when you're working with children versus adults?
I mean, I don't even know. Like children, sparkles, shimmers, rainbows, adults, wow, heavy, and that's even with adults that have done a lot of work on themselves, because we are carrying so much more trauma. And these, I don't know if you've ever seen that concept. I feel like I should have a board to be able to draw for you, but if you imagine a line,
I should have gotten you a board.
I love to draw.
Drawing it out.
So I'm at a line, and above that line is whether you connect with source, universe, creator. When you come into this human form, that's the closest you are to remembering where you came from. No wonder babies cry when they're born, right? Because they're thinking, what have I done? Then,
why do you say that? When we come into this body on this earth, we are the closest to knowing that we are source. Why is that? Because there are some people I know, I'm definitely more of a material in this matrix, earthly being. But of course, I've met so many that like to live more in other universes. And I would say when I hear about those experiences, in fact, the body and in many religious or even spiritual practices, there is this idea that our body is limiting us from actually being one, which is why the ascension path of meditation is going upwards. And they were trying to remove this beautiful temple. So I don't agree with any of that. The tantric path is much more in our bodies and actually meeting God within us. But I'm so curious that you say that, because that's slightly different from what I've heard.
So for me, basically for children, up when you're born, up until some say 7, some say 9, I'd say older based on what I've seen with my son, you're in the theta brainwaves, your subconscious brainwaves. So it's like they believe in the magic. For me, it's they remember where they come from. So that is...
when they're younger, they remember.
Yeah, okay, if you think about anybody below the age of especially 5, if you say to 5 and below, I just saw a fairy, how many of those kids are going to say, I don't believe you? Then between 5 and 10, depending on how those children are being raised, because of course we change based on our environment as well. So like with my kids know they can manifest. My kids know they can heal themselves. My kids know they can help other people to heal if that person wants to heal. These are the conversations that we're having. We want to keep that. I call it magic. It's not magic. It's abilities that every single person on the planet has. There are just some people that remember that. So then what happens when you come, think of it like a bell curve. So when you're born, closest to remembering where you came from. Then from the age of roughly 10 and above, when we start going into the teenage years, I see that as a really dark phase. For me, that's when you start to disconnect from where you came from. And that's why a lot of teenagers... For me, I wore black all the time. I was really quite, I don't know if I would have been classed with depression, possibly heavy, because it's almost like being lost at sea without an anchor. You just don't really remember. Then we sort of conform to society and the expectations. But if we look at the bottom of that bell curve now, which is where I'm really interested, let's call the middle of that midlife. And you have a spectrum there from midlife crisis to spiritual awakening. And you can have a foot in both. So there's a lot of people that come to me who would be classed as having the midlife crisis, but they're starting to say, there's got to be more, or there is more, and I had this experience and I had a dream and my grandmother came to me, and then I saw it with my own grandfather. He had always believed in God. I guess through experiences at some point didn't anymore. Then as he started to go back up the bell curve to go to where we come from, he started to remember. So I thought it was fear, but now understanding this concept, he started to remember where he came from. And I think this is even with kids who unfortunately have terminal illnesses. Towards the end, there is a sense of peace. Obviously, they don't want to suffer anymore, but they know where they're going again.
That's really beautiful. And yeah, in that respect, yeah, I suppose as children, they talk a lot about pregnancy being the first trauma, right? Of us being separated at birth from source. And then as you're young, you are attached to your mother and your family and your unit. And those teenage years are very isolating, where you are encouraged to become independent and find your own space. And that, I suppose, continues until you have that midlife crisis or a spiritual awakening, or many.
Yeah, many.
And so how do children of different ages show up with you on the table? Or even when you're working with teenagers, when they're going through this, when that heavier energy is really meeting them perhaps for the first time, do they react differently, or are they less open to what you're doing? I know, of course, it's different person to person.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously different personality types, but even the ones who are maybe a bit more closed down, they're more introverted, they don't want to share. Even just talking to them about being an empath, you can see something click on, because nobody teaches us that. So I will say to them, do you notice when you walk in a room that you can feel when somebody feels angry? Yeah. Not everybody can do that. You have superhero powers, but unfortunately, that then makes life a little bit more complicated. So even just them having the awareness that it is a gift, because all they can see is, I don't fit in, nobody likes me. And so for me, by helping these kids remember who they are and the gifts that they have, it really helps them tap into their power.
And can you talk a little bit about the variety of, I don't want to say issues, but issues that children are coming to you with, or parents are coming to you with, and perhaps maybe parents think that it's an issue and it's actually something else?
Yeah, I mean, on that last part that you said, Erika, I mean, we're the first generation of parents. If you think about it, our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents, and so on, all parented their children in a similar way. Every generation, it was maybe a little bit lighter, but we're the first generation of parents that are really breaking the cycle, breaking the patterns. And I really acknowledge that with parents when they come in to say, this is hard. We're really doing, like when my dad comes, I can see him looking at me, how I raise my kids. He literally said to me the last time he was here, Janelle, you're a great mum, but you just explained too much to the kids. When you were younger, I just told you just do it because I said so. And I said, you know what, Dad? That was easier for you. But what did that look like for me as an adult? I trusted everybody blindly. I followed police, even if what they were saying was not correct. Doctors, if I knew intuitively that what they were telling me was wrong, I still did what they told me. So actually, my way's more tiring, but I want to raise my children to have their intuition and to be able to challenge me and say, which they do. I might say, let's go do this. And the kids will turn around and go, actually, Mum, let's change that. But in terms of working with children, what I would say is I work with a lot of children who are not fitting in at school. They are the odd one out. I had one young girl who been horrifically bullied at school, and this little gang had actually set up a thing called the Cookie Crumbles. That's what they named the gang, because they referred to her as the Cookie Crumbles because she's sensitive, and when they were unkind she would cry, and that was the cookie crumbling.
Oh dear.
She's like 10 or 11, and her mum had spoken to her about giving her a power away. And I said to her one day, I said, I want you to imagine you've got a gold star on your chest and that's your power. I said, I know it's not easy. I said, but trust me, I'm a little bit older than you, and everybody that goes through a hard time, when they're older, they're going to help people. So I know you're going to do amazing things. I said, but every time that you let these girls upset you, you're taking your gold star off and you're saying, here you go, take my power. The next time I saw her, she came in a different girl, and I forgot the conversation, and I said, what's changed this week? She said, I kept my gold star, and I said, man, can I organize like a room of 40-year-old women and you come and talk to them how to stay in your power? Then I had a young girl who had been writing in a journal for 2 years, different ways that she was going to take her life. I mean, did kids do that when we were younger, Erika? Maybe,
Gosh, I don't
but
know.
less so.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunately quite common now.
Is it?
Yeah, very much so. And we did 2 sessions before the Christmas holidays, and those dark thoughts stopped coming. And our parents didn't quite believe it must be from the session, so they stopped coming. Then those dark thoughts started coming back. So then they did a bit more regular work with me. And even now when I don't see her for a while, even when she's going through a bit more of a challenging time, she doesn't go back to that. And why? Because what we've done is we've regulated our nervous system. So everybody has a dysregulated state. So for me, when I'm dysregulated, how does that show up? For me, it's overthinking, it's over worrying, it's fear of judgment, it's, oh my goodness, did I say the wrong thing? Are they upset with me? When I'm regulated, all of that noise falls away. So I'm trying to educate people that life doesn't have to look like this. This is you in the dysregulated state. This is not who you are on a soul level. So with the work we're doing, we're bringing them back to the blueprint. So then when I'm working with adults, what we do is we track symptoms over the 5 weeks. At the end, because we see the numbers reduce, anxiety was maybe a 10 out of 10, they finish on 1 out of 10. I send them the picture, track that. Every couple of months, 3 months, check that. If you see that number coming back up, whether it's coming to see me, whether it's you finding ways to nourish yourself, but remember what your dysregulated state looks like.
I really love that. And it is true of so many therapies. It's not that you go in and then it's fixed, right? But what it is getting your body to a place and your mind and your soul where you're so at peace that you go, oh, I can feel this way, first of all. And then second of all, anchoring it and going, I can continue to come back to this. And I think that does take time, because at the beginning, that's why so many of us might think, oh, I have this amazing healer, and, you know, go to them. And of course, I'm sure you and everyone else is. And it's not about what you're doing to them. It's a natural state that we can be in ourselves. But we live in this crazy, chaotic world where we actually have started to over-identify with this version of ourselves that is super stressed, super pressed, you know, maybe easy to fly off the handle or otherwise self-isolate. I know that's been happening a lot lately with everything that's going on in the world. And actually that brings me to another topic that you're very passionate about, which is ADHD. I have to say, full disclosure, I don't know a lot about ADHD, which is weird because everyone has it and everyone's talking about it. So first of all, let's start there. What is ADHD to you, and how is it affecting you personally and in your family?
So if my son had been my second, I would have known immediately that there was something going on. But because everybody around me kept saying, I don't like the word normal, but he's a normal busy boy. But Abudi came into this planet crying all the time, even when he was fed, even when he slept. So at 18 months old, he was diagnosed with sensory processing disorder. So he was sensitive to everything really: sound, lights, smell, textures, clothing, etc., etc.
Wow.
And the person at the time said he's too young to diagnose anything else. And then at age 5, we got the diagnosis that he has severe ADHD. So people do say everybody's got ADHD, and I challenge them and say, come and meet my son and say that to me. So not in a confrontational way, but when you look at my son, it's uncomfortable. It's very hard. And I see it from a spiritual perspective. He is such an evolved soul, high vibrational. For him being in this physical human form is very difficult. Now, I get that from a spiritual perspective, but we're on planet Earth. And as his mother, he's chosen me to be his mother. I need to help support him. So for Abudi, he has the combined ADHD. So he's hyper physically. He's classic textbook. You wouldn't meet Abudi and not see it immediately. Hard to focus. He asks you a question. He's already on to the next one before he even hears the answer. He's just, everything's like a million miles an hour. But then last year, I was working with somebody who is as neurotypical as they can be. And then I started thinking, I think I might have ADHD. Because he would be working on the laptop. I would ask him a question. He said to me, I'm not like you. I can only do one thing at a time. So I'd have to go make a coffee. Then I'd sit down. Then I'd go to the toilet. And then all of my voice notes I listened to on speed 2, etc., etc. But then my daughter had what I would have called social anxiety. Very confident like me in her comfort zone. You take her out of it, not so much. So I took her to do what we call a brain map. It's through neurofeedback, and it literally tells you what's going on with your brain. And she got the diagnosis of ADHD. You could have blown me over with a feather. And I'm thinking, how could I not have seen this? And everything fell into piece. So because my son talks all the time, Mimi often I thought was going into her own world because it's exhausting, listening to him talking all the time. But then I realised it's her ADHD. She's not here. So Mimi has the inattentive type. So you can see she would have been classed as the daydreamer, the girl doodling on the jotters when we were younger, staring at the trees.
I actually looked up a bunch of symptoms for it. There's the inattention symptoms, which you're just talking about, trouble focusing on tasks, frequently losing items like keys, phones, notebooks, easily distracted by noises, thoughts, or external stimuli, poor time management, chronic lateness, avoiding tasks that require sustained mental effort, forgetting to complete tasks and follow through. So that is inattention symptoms. The hyperactive symptoms, that is high energy, you've already mentioned this is a bit with your son, constant fidgeting or tapping hands and feet, feeling like difficulty sitting still, talking excessively or interrupting others, difficulty staying seated, blurting out answers or thoughts impulsively, restlessness or just an internal sense of agitation. And, I was reflecting on these because depending on my level of rest, patience, depending on how centered and grounded I feel, I can have either of these. But when I'm centered, I'm completely a different person. But I have noticed when I'm really, really stressed, I do start fidgeting. I just do start going, give me the answer. Okay, move on, trying to get through the day. Or kind of daydreaming and forgetting things. I've been forgetting things lately. And I'm just starting to acknowledge that it's from overwhelm. Now, reading this, I would think I have ADHD. And so I want to pose a question, and I don't want to insult anyone or, but it's just a question that's been on my mind because so many people are like, I've just been diagnosed with ADHD. Everyone that I know, not everyone, but so many people. And I question, is it possible? Like when it comes to your son, it feels like he definitely has it to a greater degree. But is it possible that we just live in such a chaotic world that no other generation has had to live in, whether we're talking even EMFs and frequencies to all of the noise with social media, to just the lives that we live. We are overscheduled, overburdened, super high stressed, high performance. Everything is about optimizing everything. And I got to thinking, just because I had read something on ADHD saying people with ADHD have a hard time regulating, moving from the autonomous to the parasympathetic nervous system. So that's the fight, flight to rest and digest that you were talking about earlier. And I thought, is it just that everyone does have ADHD and we could all have ADHD because we live in a world that is not helping us regulate our nervous systems, that is pushing us into dysregulation all of the time? What are your thoughts on that?
So I'll tell you exactly what I think. This is just the musings of Janelle. Through now I know I have ADHD, my 2 kids. Yeah. And
I love that I can ask you from your perspective.
Yeah, because exactly. So, and when I say, everybody, when people make the comment, everybody's got ADHD, it's really not from a judgment perspective. But what I say to people is not everybody has ADHD. Because my dad, when I got my diagnosis, my dad said, then I must have it. So then he was staying with us for a few weeks and he said to me one day, oh, it would be really nice to put an incense stick on. And I said, Dad, it's funny you say that. 15 minutes ago, I went to do that. And on the way to the incense stick, I realised the cats needed fed. Then after feeding the cats, I washed half the dishes. Then I remembered I needed to vacuum the upstairs armchair. I did the upstairs armchair. Then I thought, let me come back and do the puffy later. So I left the little vacuum. Yeah. Then I came down, I put the clothes in the washing machine, but realised I didn't have the detergent. So then I went to do that. And the incense stick still wasn't on, and he just went, oh, then I definitely don't have it. So my thought process, Erika, is you're 100% right in what you're saying, because my dad is as neurotypical as you can come. Even him at 72, phone, laptop, watch, whatever that might be, our attention span, our ability to focus, and the level of dysregulation we all have is crazy. So that's absolutely there. Do we all have a little bit of traits of ADHD as a result of it? Yes, but not everybody has ADHD. And the way I see it is, I believe, because why are so many people being diagnosed with it? It's not as rare as we think. My thought process, loosely 50% of the population are neurodivergent. And I think if we went back to caveman times, maybe we would see neurotypical were at home gathering, and the 50% of the ADHD were out doing the hunting. That's how I see it. I don't think it's anything that's new. I think we've just got the tools and the awareness. I think the education system was designed by very neurotypical people. The people with neurodivergence do not fit into that. And that's when we were younger. How many boys particularly, not academic, lazy, naughty, outside the classroom, these kids had ADHD, and actually most of them were super intelligent, but they were bored, or they were not being taught in the way that they needed to be taught. If you get somebody like my son jumping on a trampoline while he's learning, he can retain that information. So the schools are not set up for success for neurodivergent kids.
Interesting. How has energy work supported your kids with ADHD? And is it different for the two?
Yeah, as in meaning with them having ADHD?
Yeah.
So what I would say is, like most mothers, and this is a big thing that I'm so passionate about talking to parents about, is focus on yourself as a mother. So with everything that was going on with a buddy definitely needed support. I was taking him to healers, therapists, doctors. I was a mess. So I was very good, because I had my own trauma, I was very good at showing the world everything was good and Janelle is strong. My nervous system was absolutely shot. And that's why I've trained to do what I do, because when I realised with my nervous system being dysregulated, my two kids felt like they were lost at sea. They had nothing to hold on to. Now, honestly, even if I'm not maybe doing enough cranial for my kids or whatever that might look like, the fact that I am for the most part centered and they can hold on to me for support, that in itself is a game changer.
Oh, I love that message. Yeah, definitely put your mask on first, right?
Well, I never understood that analogy. I would say it, but I didn't really believe it.
Yeah.
And then one day, literally, I thought, okay, Janelle, you're on a plane and you've got a choice. You save yourself or you save your kids. Obviously, you're going to save your kids. But then I thought, then you've got these two kids living without their mother. Let's say they've got nobody else to take care of them, and they've got to live with the pain of their mother not being around. But if I survive and they don't, man, I have to carry that. I have to carry the pain of that. And that's when it hit me of the oxygen mask, and that's why it makes sense. But I always say, Erika, if there's only money for one person in the family to do healing work, it should be the mum every single time. Not because I'm against dads and men, not at all. But even when women work in the marriage, it's the mother that spends the most time with the children. If you look at any family unit, if dad is stressed but mum's okay, everybody's okay. If the kids are going through stuff but mum's okay, somehow everybody's okay. If mum is not okay, the ripple effect that has on the children and on their partner is immense.
Have you seen families where the father is the one that's super grounded and providing that, and the mother is really frazzled? Is it still chaotic in that instance? Because a couple families come to mind.
So I work with one family where the dad has done a lot of work on himself and the mother has not, and you can see the impact that that's had on the child. Yeah, definitely.
In what way?
Well, she probably tells me more than she tells her own mother. You know, her mum's not a very aware person, would never be open to doing any work on herself, has never even come to a session. You know, it's always the dad bringing her. So that for me speaks volumes. You know, you don't want to judge, but for me as a mother, we really want to be involved as much as, I'm a working mother. I can't go all to the events at my kids' school, but in terms of working, like Abudi and I started with a life coach last week for him. I was in the first session. Now she's going to work with him, but I voice note her after I get a voice note. I want to know what's going on, you know, and you see, if I think back to how I was raised, My mum didn't have a clue what was going on with me at school. She didn't know if I had exams. She didn't know what was going on. I do sometimes wonder, have we gone too much the other way here? We're too much involved in our children's lives. So I really try to find that healthy balance that I'm involved, but I also give them the freedom to be their own people as well.
And of course, every situation is different. It sounds like Abudi needs a little bit more support. And how beautiful is it that at 10 years old, he gets to have a life coach?
Yeah.
I would have killed for that.
I never thought about that. So, and actually we went for the first session and she was talking to him about thinking in perspective. So she said, Abudi, what's in your head that helps you to think? So what would a 10-year-old say? Brain. What did my son say? Intuition. So I laughed. So he thought he said something wrong. I said, I'm so proud of you. She just said, oh, you can tell he's your son.
I love this. Yeah, as we come to closing, not fully yet, I wanted to talk a little bit about sort of myth busting. What are some of the greatest misconceptions you think people have of energy work and healing that you wish more people would understand?
Good question. So I wish everybody would understand that energy is science. You know, everybody sees it as this woo-woo, but we now know that energy field scientifically exists. So even if we remove the tapping into higher dimensions and angels and guides, remove all of that and purely work with the energy, the importance of energetic health is everything for me. And I actually saw one woman's post. She's unschooling her children, and she said, if you're going to teach your children only one thing, it's the importance of energy. And that really stuck with me, you know, and I've had some really high flying men who are such skeptics and who have, you know, trauma and they have anger issues and anxiety and pain. And when they shift through the sessions and they start to understand the importance of energy, I just wish that everybody would realize that.
I love that. And also, I've heard you talk about, and once in a while I'll do it, but I actually forget often. I've heard you talk about a golden bubble that you teach your kids and clients and the children that come to you as well about in order to protect our energy field. I wonder if you can talk a little bit into that, and also we can end on perhaps you demonstrating it.
Sure. So if we think again about our energy field, when we are not protected energetically, we go around all day, every day, picking up energetic clutter. So imagine living in a house where every time you go shopping, you don't put your shopping away. Eventually, it's not going to feel nice going into that house. So that's what happens with our energy field. If you go into a meeting and there's maybe angry words exchanged, that comes into your energy field. Then maybe you go to the hair salon and your hairdresser's dumping her drama on you. That goes into your energy field. Is it any wonder then that we get heavier and heavier? So a big thing, I had one client, I taught her how to protect her energy, and she's a big introvert, and she came flying into my room one day and she said, I can go to the mall. Now I can go to the mall for hours and not be drained. Because particularly sensitive people, empaths, you get drained by others' energy. So simply by protecting your energy, it's a game changer.
And so you wake up every morning and do this, or is it throughout the day, multiple times? How does it work?
I don't need to do it anymore now, Erika, because it's just that it's always with me now. No. So I've done it so many times, but for other people, I just tell them, keep doing it. And it's almost like a muscle that you need to practice. And then finally, now I was somebody, I remember thinking, why when I go to meet a friend that has a problem, they skip out the door when we finish and I have to go home and sleep. I could not for the life of me understand what was going on. And then my first spiritual mentor, we had coffee one day and she said, "Oh, you're an empath." And I said, "Yeah, of course I'm an empathetic person. I care about people." "No, you're an empath." And I had to go Google what that meant. So it's really now, because I lived and breathed this protection for so long, it's very, very rare that I'm in somebody's company that I then need to do it. But as soon as I feel my energy being drained, I do it. But yeah.
You know, I feel this myself. And I also see this a lot with a lot of I have many friends in the healing community. And especially when they're starting out or they're ramping up the number of clients they see each week, sometimes I go, gosh, that must be so exhausting. And other times it can be very energizing. But when you have to hold space for a lot of heavy emotions, I've always asked people that, like, what's your secret to kind of make sure that you absorb less? And so walk me through it. Walk me through your beautiful golden bubble.
Sure. All right. Do you want to close your eyes? If everybody closes their eyes. And just nice and easy, connect into your breath. And slowly bringing your awareness to the energy of the universe. And if you connect to the energy of the universe and see a beautiful golden light, and as you breathe, this beautiful golden light travels all the way down to form a beautiful ball of light around you. As you continue to breathe, see this golden light wrapping around and around. And your bubble of golden light can be as big or small that is comfortable for you. And as you continue to breathe, see a heavy energy as a smoky grey colour coming towards you. And with ease, it just bounces off of you and is absorbed by the universe. So again, see that beautiful light around and around. And allow yourself to feel expanded, knowing you're safe and you're protected by the universe. And if you would like, you can hold your left thumb with your right hand and really anchor this feeling of protection into your being, knowing that you can connect to this feeling at any time. And when you're ready, take a big inhale through the nose, a clearing exhale through the mouth. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes.
Wow. So beautiful.
I always go deep when I do that as well. You can feel,
And how wonderful that the children that you work with get a meditation from you, don't they? And that you can listen to it in the morning or in the evening. And what a beautiful exercise. And I can see that if you did that every day for a month, even, maybe even shorter, or longer, you would one day it would just be automatic.
It's just an awareness. And I'll often say to people, particularly adults, for example, let's say they've got a toxic boss, and if you go into a meeting and you forgot to put yourself in your bubble, just in your mind's eye, see them in their bubble, and you in your bubble. And I also like to do this analogy of this is mine and this is yours, to have that separation, because we just take their energy on without even realizing. Yeah.
Sometimes when I have really like an intimate conversation with a friend who would be open to doing this, I ask to put a bubble, and then we ask each other, what would you like to remove from the bubble? So if there's any anxiety or fear or whatever, and what would you like to call in?
Lovely.
Like compassion, slowness, understanding, whatever it is, love. And then what I realize is it's just like manifestation really is around intention setting, isn't it? It's just setting the intention, and somehow you're a bit calmer going in forward, or you're centered and your nervous system is regulated.
Very much so, yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. Janelle, how can people do you work with people all over the world, or do you mostly Dubai?
I can do it online. It's actually really powerful online.
Okay.
But 99% of people are in person. There's something about being held, I suppose.
Yeah.
But I do have people online as well, and they have massive shifts as well.
Beautiful. And how can people find you?
If they go to my Instagram, which is @_Janelle Houston.
Wonderful. Well, we'll put that in the show notes. We're so lucky to have you here to share your wisdom, your case studies. I have so many friends with kids that I think would resonate very much with our conversation today. So thank you
for having me, Erika. It's been such a pleasure chatting to you. I could be here for hours.
I know. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll see you soon.
Hey there. If you like this episode and you're getting some beautiful transmissions or are feeling inspired to support this podcast in any way, the best way to do that is to give us a rating on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, on YouTube, or wherever it is that you're plugging into the Enlighten DXB podcast. You can also follow us on Instagram at Enlighten DXB. If you want to reach out to any of the guests we have on the show, you can check out their profiles and their work at www.enlightendxb.com. And for those of you in Dubai looking for community, retreats, or additional resources, you can also sign up to our emailing list there. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the next episode. Until then, I wish you more joy, more ease, and a little sprinkle of grace.